African, one of my surprises in Swaziland was to see a Swazi. You see this guy, you see he's living well, he's got a stomach, which I don't have, okay? You see him dressed in almost loincloths, all right? And he's driving his big Mercedes Benz. You walk up to him and talk to him in English, he speaks so fluently, he has a university degree. And I've always found that pretty unique. There is this guy dressed like what most of you see as a typical African. But he owns a Mercedes Benz, he has a university degree. That kind of harmony, cultural harmony, I have not noticed in most parts of the world that I have been to. It was pretty interesting. Anyway, we might come back and talk about Swaziland later. Let me proceed. I'm going to proceed by treating you like I would treat my class, or any of my classes. So I should like to ask a question. What do you understand by culture? What's your name, please?
Dave.
Dave. I'm sorry, Dave, this is nothing personal, but what do you understand by culture?
Well, a culture is a philosophy, a belief, a lifestyle.
Yeah, a philosophy, a lifestyle, a belief. Great, Dave. Your Excellency.
William.
Your name?
William.
Where? Okay, Will. Would you tell us what you understand by culture?
Just different nationalities, what they believe in, what they differences between.
So beliefs again. All right. May I pick on the lady behind you, please? What's your name? No, lady in black. It's not going to be that easy. Okay. Okay. What do you understand by culture?
A way of life, and once again beliefs, values.
Yeah, a way of life. Okay. Then now the lady over there in the, there are two ladies there. The one who's next to the blonde. Okay.
I think
All right.
about you.
What do you understand by culture?
The way I like to think of culture is what a professor told me is that a culture has stories of how they evolved, a belief and storytelling about how they came to be, and that what makes that culture different than another.
That's beautiful. So you might as well say the way I see culture is the way people see themselves. All right, that makes sense. That's beautiful. Those are enough definitions, and they are all correct. Great. I should come back to them later. But let me tell you a few stories that might help to illustrate the culture, the concept of culture. Not only illustrate it, but so how cultures differ from one society to another. All right. I'll tell you a couple of stories. I have many stories, by the way. But I'll tell you a few. Maybe I'll tell you 10 or 11 stories, okay? We'll see. All right. A British traveler was in a Kenyan village waiting for the bus. And then he waited and waited. There was no bus. But he had asked this guy who was seated just 2 or 3 feet away from him, selling mangoes. He said, he kept on asking this guy, when is the bus coming? The guy kept on saying, the bus would come very soon. And after every hour, this poor British guy would ask this Kenyan guy selling his mangoes there, when is the bus coming? And the Kenyan guy keeps on saying, oh, it will come very soon, okay? The poor guy spent the whole day there. Now it's evening. The sun was setting, and there was no bus, okay? Now, he became very worried, so this guy was taking him for a ride. And now, he became very restless. And he saw an old man coming with his donkey. And he stopped this old man and said, hey, excuse me, Dad, I'm having some problems here. I've been waiting for the bus the whole day, and I want to know when the bus is coming. And the old man said, yes, it's coming. The bus is coming. He said, yeah, but when? He said, yeah, it's coming in 2 days. Okay. All right? That was very interesting. Why? Because to those Africans in the villages there, 2 days isn't so what? What the heck, as Americans say. If you're going to wait for the bus, it's coming in 2 days, so time is not so much a factor, okay? It's not so much a factor. The bus is coming, so relax, let's have fun, you know. What's the problem? And let's pray this guy who is coming from London to somewhere in Yorkshire. He's used to time. He knows, oh, if I arrive 10 minutes late at work, maybe Fletcher is going to fire me, you know. Okay. Time means everything. Okay.
Lunch is like that too.
No, Fletcher, oh. Okay. It's going to fire me, you know. This is the thing. So time means everything in this society. In an African village, it is not necessarily so. Why? Because of the cultural differences. Great. Another story. An American anthropologist went to study the Maasai in Kenya again, and he spent a long time there and made friends with this young Maasai woman, very attractive, elegant, whom all the young men in the village would definitely like to marry. Okay? And she thought it would be very interesting to take this young Maasai woman, okay, with me to New York. So she talked to the elders, and the elders said, fine, you may take the young lady we trust to New York for a visit. They came to New York, and when they were in New York, there was a reception at the most expensive hotel in New York. By the way, what's the most expensive hotel in New York? What's it called? Waldorf Astoria. You got it. Okay. The first time I saw that name was in Eddie Murphy's Coming to America. So talking about culture, you know? Okay? Great. So this anthropologist decided to take her Maasai friend, this attractive young Maasai woman, to the Waldorf Astoria for a reception. Wow, it's fun. The Maasai woman decided to dress up, dress in coats. You know, the Maasai is dressed in a certain way. Some of you may see it, okay? It was summer, you know. You wrap some kind of cloth around yourself. It's a very modest way of dressing. All right? And then she took out the ghee that she brought from Kenya. Ghee is a kind of oil from fat, you know, and then put it all over her body, as she would do when she was living in Maasai land, going to meet a future potential husband. Okay, and then she had ochre. Some of you may know ochre. It's kind of like mud, red, you know, and they put in the hair, you know. Okay, it's got some kind of reddish color. Put this all in her hair, and now, wow, it's beautiful. Put ghee on her body. Wow, we're going to some big occasion, you know. She was looking good. All right. They went to the Waldorf Astoria. When they got to the Waldorf Astoria, then you can imagine they are all these proper Wall Street New Yorkers, and they see this African woman. Wow, who is this strange animal in coats? But this lady was really in Maasai land. All the young men would have been, you know, crawling, you know, at her feet. But the New Yorkers didn't think so. Who is this, you know, creature walking from where? Some kind of two-legged E.T. coming from somewhere. All right, so most people, some were curious and they were very nice to her. Some people were not really comfortable approaching her. But she had a wonderful time, and the lady translated and everything. But then people were also, most people walked away from her. Why? Because of the ghee that she put on her body, because of the ochre that she put on her body, because of her cloth that she was putting on. She came with this cloth from Maasai land. And Maasai is taking care of their goats and their whatever, you know. Okay? And then she was putting this thing on, but it was clean according to her, it was nice and everything. But there were a lot of people who thought there was something wrong and they kept away from her. Those who approached her came out of curiosity more than attraction or fascination. No fascination, I mean, not fascination, they positively. Okay, great. The reception ended, they went home. When they went home, our friend, the American anthropologist, asked her, said, so, did you have a good time at the reception? And the Maasai woman turned around and said, oh yeah, he said, I had a wonderful time. All these people who came to talk to me, it was great. And she said, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. He said, but the people there, they stink. All right? Now, that is very interesting. And I didn't tell you, when she walked in, some people decided to leave. They just couldn't stand the stench, you know? So who is smelling and who is not smelling, okay? That's the whole point again. There. Let's continue. When I was in Swaziland, the first time I was going to Mozambique. Mozambique is a troubled country. Very big, but really troubled. Political problems in that country. It's what some people will say, the typical African country. Because typical African country, according to most people, is crisis-ready, all right? Mozambique is a crisis-ridden country. A lot of troubles. But anyway, Mozambique is a great country. You used to have a really, you know, it was a beautiful place to go. And when I was in Swaziland, I said, let me go and visit Mozambique. And I told this young Swazi friend of mine, a Swazi boy, and I said, oh, I'm going to Mozambique. He said, Mozambique? Don't go to Mozambique. I said, why? He said, because they eat scorpions. I said, what? He said, yeah, they eat scorpions. They are strange. They are weird there. And I thought, scorpions. Swaziland is a landlocked country. They don't have rivers. They have small rivers, but they don't have the sea. They are not on the coast, so they don't eat much fish. They don't know much about fish. What was this young man calling scorpions? Could you guess? Shrimps. Yeah. Yeah. Shrimps, okay? That's quite interesting. Let's go on. I lived in France for some time, and I left France to go back to England once. When I was in France, I visited England because, as our guest said, I studied in England when I left Africa. So I went back to Cambridge for the summer, which I sometimes do from time to time, because such a beautiful place in the summer. It's really beautiful, great place to be. And then I met one of my friends from the past when I was a student there. He did his PhD in physics. Now he's teaching in Cambridge. His name is Yen. And Yen told me, oh, Karamo, I heard that you're living in France now. I said, yes. He said, how is it? I said, oh, I love Paris. He said, what? How do you get along with those bloody French? I said, what? He said, those bloody French. And I said, Yen, why do you call them bloody French? He said, because they eat frogs. Because they eat frogs, so can you imagine that? All right? Great. And even now, when I go to Paris, I was in Paris a few months ago, my French friends would ask me, how can you live in America? And I say, why? He said, how can you live on hamburgers? Okay? And these same French friends have also asked me, each time we start talking about England, they would ask me, how can you live in England? I said, why? Because you only eat pudding. How can you eat in the land of pudding? You know, I can never live in England. That's interesting. And my travels in Asia, in Africa, even in this country, Europe, have exposed me to one very popular statement. What is that? Our food is the best. French people think their food is the best in the world. When I was in Paris, one of my friends from Morocco told me Moroccan cuisine is #1 in the world. I was in Singapore, I talked to this old man in the Chinese restaurant. He said, oh, Chinese food is the best in the world. It's all over the world. You go to America, Chinese food is the best. You go to France, Chinese food is the best. Our food is the best. Italians think that their spaghetti is the best, okay? Italians really think that their food is the best. It is basically the best. I have even met Mexicans here who told me that Mexican food is the best. Why do you think all Americans are eating burritos? All right? Okay? And now coming back to even me, I don't know, I told Mike in the class once, I said, look, even me as an African, you may think in Africa we have nothing to eat, maybe snakes or scorpions. But I still believe that my food is the best. I enjoy it the best. Some of you may be wondering, yak, what is that? You know? But I think my food is the best because I grew up eating it and I've developed a taste for it. And the question of taste is very important because culture is all about taste. Culture is all about taste. And that taste you develop for food It's the same way that you develop a taste for your environment, for the people you know, for the house you live in. But we'll come to that later on. Let's talk about religion, because religion is also an aspect of culture. All right. Muslims think they are the chosen people. I've talked to my Muslim friends and they believe Christians are infidels. All right. Jews believe that they are the chosen people. All right. Okay, someone may say maybe their case is even more valid because it's said in the Bible. Okay, someone may say that. Okay, but the Jews think they're very special people. All right. Christians, I've talked to my Christian friends and I've had all their criticism they have to say about Muslims. Same thing. In India, you have Hindus. The Hindus believe that the Hindu way of life is the best way of life. Hence, India is a troubled country today. The Hindus are killing Muslims, Muslims are killing Hindus. It's in the area of religion. Let's proceed. Let's move on to something less serious than religion. What is that? Advertising. All right? In one of my classes one day when I was at the University of Paris, I asked the students to do homework for me on advertising. So they did individual projects on advertising. And I went home myself and did a little bit of research on advertising and culture and the various forms advertising takes in different countries. Now, most of my French students, I noticed when they brought back their projects, and they brought it back with photographs because I asked them to bring pictures too. Almost 80% or 85% involved the picture of a woman. And a woman who is not properly dressed. Okay? Or a woman, even if not properly, if properly dressed, is very, very properly dressed. Really, really properly dressed. In such a way, the idea is to attract. All right? In France again, when I was there, I remember pretty well that one of the videos at that same time I saw on TV, they were showing on TV, it was a commercial, was a BBC video for people who are interested in learning English. And this video, you know, on TV, you have a boy, he comes very well dressed, and then you have a girl, she comes with smiles already, you know, and the boy walks up to the girl and says with a very thick French accent, "I love you, you love me, so let's speak English." Okay. So you wonder, what does learning English have to do with "I love you and you love me, so let's speak English"? Okay. But that was pretty interesting. When I was in England, and actually this is my favorite advert I've ever seen. My favorite advert I've ever seen was this advert I saw on TV. It was a British petroleum advert. Okay? You hear the telephone ringing and ringing and ringing. After a certain time, then somebody was walking past and he hears this telephone ringing. Then he walks into the room where the telephone is ringing. Then he picks up the telephone and says, "Hello, hello, hello, hello." And then a voice comes and says, "Is this, I don't know, Coopers and Lybrand?" And this guy says, said, "No, wrong number, no, wrong number, no number," and hangs up. Then this guy walks away, and as he walks away, then all of a sudden you see at the bottom of the telephone, British Petroleum, Customer Complaints Department. Okay. Okay. And I thought that's excellent, it's subtle, okay? Pretty sophisticated, it's really subtle. All right. In America, I can give you many examples, but I've decided not to give you some of my favorite examples. I want to give you one which I have watched recently. It's an advert, I think it has something to do with American beef producers or whoever. But I really like this commercial. The music's pretty loud. It's really like rocking, hey, let's have fun now, you know. Music's pretty loud. And there comes this guy who's really, he's the total opposite of me, you know. He has a lot of weight, in other words, you know. Okay. This guy comes and he dances, man. It's serious dancing. I really like that, you know. He goes, he goes, he goes, he goes, he boogies. Okay. Then he really turns around and almost break dance, you know. Then at the end of the commercial, it says, it is not the meat, it is the motion. Okay? And I said, wow, that's really cool. Okay? Okay? That is pretty interesting. And some of this I want you to interpret on your own. Or if we come to questions, then maybe you can ask me why I'm telling you. But all of these adverts have got so much to tell us about culture if you look at different countries and different societies. All right? Now let us talk about marital life. As most of you know, in the Middle East, for example, the worst thing that could happen to a lady is to be discovered at the time of marriage. I'm sorry to use this word, but I'm assuming we are all adults. Okay? Is at the time of marriage to be discovered that the girl is not a virgin. That is a disgrace. You know, sometimes the woman will be killed. I think that's terrible, unfortunately, to kill somebody for anything of that sort. But yes, it happens, all right? Okay? And of course, the world has changed now. I'm not saying they do it now, but even now, it's a terrible disgrace. Okay? And I even know that in a lot of African societies, it is good if you are married and you are a virgin. That's desired, you know. It has a lot of implications. Now in this country, and most of the West, if you are 13, 14, 15, 16, you don't have a boyfriend, then something seems to be wrong somewhere, okay? And we know that's very, very true. Okay? Great. Let's talk about appointments again. Appointments. Of course, appointments relate to the concept of time, which we have talked about. But let's talk about appointments. Appointments simply means going to see somebody, inform him beforehand, and if necessary, let him know how long you're going to stay, or let her know how long you're going to stay. Great. I have many friends around the world, and one of the reasons why I travel is because I have a lot of friends around the world. I'm not a rich man, contrary to what most people think. But I have a very cheap way of traveling because each time I travel, I stay with my friends. One of the major costs in international travel now is accommodation. Now, if you solve that part of the equation, then, you know, you can basically go anywhere. That's the secret of my travel, okay? I almost say the secret of my success. Then I thought, oh, no. I'm not quite Michael J. Fox yet, you know. Anyway, so each time I'm traveling, and I'm on my way to Paris, I told Mike, on the 22nd of March, I have to call some of my French friends and say, oh, I'm coming. And they say, oh, fine, we'll be happy to put you up. When are you arriving? Oh, I'm arriving on the 22nd, 10 o'clock in the morning. How long are you going to stay? Oh, I intend to stay 4 days. All right, so you'll arrive on Friday and you're going to leave on Saturday or Sunday or Monday. Yes, all right, great. Okay, we'll make provision for you. Okay, great. And I pack up and I go to Paris. All right. I have a cousin whose wife wanted to come and visit me in America. And I told her, I said, how long do you intend to stay? And it's about a year. He has stopped writing to me. He was so upset with me, so mad with me, that he decided that he is not going to write to me anymore. Why? Because I asked her, how long do you intend to stay when you come to visit me? Now, those things are pretty interesting. We'll come back to them later. All right. Now, I want to kind of, therefore, what is culture? It's a question. There is culture. I am assuming that from the real brilliant definitions we have had from the lady there, and the gentleman here, and the gentleman over there, we all know what is culture. I have been illustrating the cultural differences and what is called the relativity or the relativity of culture. Cultural relativeness is basically what I've been illustrating through this story. But from what we've been told and from what I have basically told, you can see something, and that is what culture seems to be. On one hand, a means of social cohesion, that is, keeping societies together, bringing individuals together, a way of life, as you told me. a philosophy, as you told me, a way of life, somebody says, you know, well, how do people perceive themselves? That is basically what culture is all about. And therefore, it has an advantage in that respect. What's the advantage? The advantage is that it helps individuals understand each other. All right? It helps individuals understand each other, number one. Number two, it helps individuals understand their environment and hence adapt to that environment. That's basically what culture is all about. And it very much confines the definitions that we have been given before. And these are also the advantages of culture. However, there are disadvantages of culture. And those disadvantages may be explicit in the stories that I have told you. All right? So, what are those disadvantages? Culture is very particularistic, I would say. It is particularistic. It's very specific. It takes place within a context, within an environment. All right? It makes sense, therefore, within that particular environment. Therefore, Gambian culture makes a lot of sense in Gambia. All right. But at the same time, because it is particularistic, it tends to be inherently what? Ethnocentric. Okay? And in all the stories I have told you, you have seen that basically. Is that culture helps us adapt to our environment, understand our environment, get to know each other, and get along. But at the same time, it seems to close us against the rest of the world. Therefore, we have Suarez is talking about scorpions in Mozambique. The English people calling French people frogs, you know? The French people calling Americans hamburger eaters, hamburger johns, you know? Okay? The Italians thinking that their food is the best. Chinese thinking that their food is the best. Okay? You have this all over the world, all over the world, all over the world. Whether you are in America, I have noticed it, whether you're in Europe, whether you are in Africa, whether you're in Asia, it's just basically all over the world. Now, this kind of particularistic tendency or characteristic of culture gives rise to ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is basically the same thing as cultural arrogance. All right? That's one people thinking they are the best, they are better than other people. All right? That cultural arrogance, we have seen it expressed in many ways. We have seen it, for example, in the Greek civilization, the Roman Empire. They thought they were the best, and they used that as a rationale to conquer the rest of the world. We have seen it expressed even in the form of in colonialism. We cannot say that where ethnocentrism was the main explanation of colonialism, but it was a factor. There are other reasons for colonialism, okay, but it was a factor. All right. But however, ethnocentrism or cultural arrogance do not always have to express themselves in a violent way. That's not correct. Okay? Most people we meet in the streets are ethnocentric. That's not so much the problem. The problem is how it's expressed, how it's turned into real life action. All right. And I'm saying this in particular because I have noticed in my travels that that every society I've been to, people tend to be ethnocentric. But not everybody I have met or every society in history have translated that into violence. And my favorite example is France, for example. French people are pretty ethnocentric. They believe that French culture is the best, okay? I mean, when I go to France, sometimes I find myself becoming an American because I hear so much about, oh, America has no culture, America has no culture, America is this, America is that, America. And I find myself turning around sometimes defending America, okay? Because they always say, oh, French culture is the best. French culture is like, French culture is everything is French culture. And the Italians are like that too. But the French people, however, have not translated that kind of cultural arrogance in quotes in any kind of violent action. Unlike, for example, Germany under Nazism, we see what has happened. That was pretty violent. And there's a cultural dimension to it. All right? And we have seen it, as I said, in the past history. We have seen it in several places too. So sometimes it can be pretty violent, that cultural arrogance or ethnocentrism. Sometimes it does not have to be. The French are pretty subtle about the way they go about their cultural superiority over the rest of the world. But the Germans we saw during the Second World War actually went out of their way to demonstrate it to the rest of the world. And it's not the only explanation. Again, I'm only talking about one of the factors that explain it. All right? Great. Now, I don't know how much time I have, but let me try to round up here. I wanted to leave you with two things to think about. One is the relationship between culture and development. The second one is the major cultural controversies of our period, that is, of the world we live in, and at the time that we live. What are those? I'm going to leave you with that question to ponder rather than try to give an answer. If somebody insists and asks me, then I may try to answer it. Okay? One is there a relationship between culture and development? When I went home the last time, Fletcher was asking me. I arrived in Gambia at a time of great festivity. It was Ramadan, okay? And for you, some of you don't know what Ramadan is, when Muslims fast the whole month. And the Ramadan had ended. And there I was. I flew from New York City to where? Gambia. New York City, we would say, is, some people would say, is the richest city in the whole world. Okay? And I stayed in New York with a friend of mine who was living in Manhattan and working on Wall Street at that time. And then I landed in Gambia. And the first thing I saw, I remember when I went to my uncle's house, was that I noticed all over my head there were green notes. Green notes all over the place. I am just seeing green notes. What are those green notes? They are $25 in Gambian bills. Gambian currency. The Gambian the currency is called the dollars, like the dollar. So I was seeing $25 bills all over my head. And I wondered what is going on here. It was people giving people, you know, all over the place. Dollars were flying all over. $25 bills, I'm telling you. They are not $1 bills, okay? What was going on there? People are giving to each other. They just give. And I told myself, I left New York City, perhaps the richest city in the world. I've not seen $1 flying over my head. Unless there was a real good reason for that. Okay? And I came, I said, I have heard so much in America about poverty in Africa and all these things. And then I come to an African country for the first time, begin to see real money. What is going on here? Is something wrong? There's a cultural explanation to that. It's a cultural explanation. All right? Finally, let's put it this way. All right? It's another controversy I'm going to leave you to ponder about rather than giving you the answer. In the last 2 or 3 years, 2 years rather, there have been at least 2 quoted statements in the press from Japanese people at the cabinet level in Japan, pretty high. And the statements were about the fact that in America, that America is lagging behind because of minorities, African Americans and other minorities. They are diluting American culture and making it impossible for America to compete with Japan. On 2 different occasions, these were quoted in the press. That's pretty controversial, okay? And caused a lot of reaction around the world. Naturally, people didn't want to hear about it. Okay. So the questions that I am going to leave you with is this. And there are people who strongly believe that there's a link between culture and development. Okay. It's what the Japanese Prime Minister or Japanese minister said. I mean, is it true? Okay. Now, can we look back to America's economic performance over the past 5, 6, or even 10 years? And the fact that they have been lagging behind Japan for the past 10 years, as evidenced by the trade deficit, for example, okay? And other performance in other sectors of the American economy. Is that evidence that therefore there seems to be cultural dilution in America? And that therefore there is a link between culture and development. That America is lagging behind Japan, has been lagging behind Japan for the last 10 years or so because of that factor. Okay? Or do we have to look at America's history over the past hundreds of years when America actually became the most powerful nation in the world? And in fact, even today, America is the most powerful nation in the world by most measures. Now, if that is true, can we agree with the Japanese that therefore minorities have actually resulted in America lagging behind Japan, or has minority actually contributed to America pushing ahead? Or has minority simply, did they have nothing to do with American progress? It's the majority culture that has pushed America ahead. Or is there a majority culture in America? Or do we live in a melting pot? Most foreigners don't think Americans have a culture, because in America you have everything. It's that wonderful state, the great thing about this country, that you have so many differences. There is no country in the world where I've been to where you have all these kind of cultural differences, to an extent where it's even very, very difficult to determine what is American culture anymore. Or would we disagree and say, oh no, there is American culture, and what is that culture? And how does it compare with Japanese culture, with German culture, and French culture, etc. This is a very big topic, and I need to go on and on and on and on. And I know I can go on and on and on and on. But I would like to give you an opportunity to ask some questions that we may discuss. Of course, I'd be disappointed if you don't have questions. I have left you a lot of questions. And yes, Chris.
Well, you've already done so much in your life. What are your plans for the future? Since you've seen so many things, what do you want to try next?
Chris, we're here to ask questions about culture, not travel plans. Okay, good question. Let me answer Chris' question here. As Fletcher said, I'm thinking about my next destination. Of course, I have to buy the ticket first, you know. Okay. So I don't know. One of the plans I have in my mind currently, probably to go to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to work for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. That's one plan I have. The other plan is first go to American University in Washington, D.C. and teach there for a little while. I have an interview there on the 15th of this month for a teaching position there, so I'm thinking about that too. The other possibility is to go to the London and do some research at the London School of Economics on the European Common Market, which I'm working with. So these are the different plans I have. I wanted to go home, but I am not really sure if I am ready to go home. I think I need a little bit more international experience. I need to develop my contacts further. Then I can go home and do the things that I would like to do when I go home, instead of just going home for the sake of going home. The best thing I would like to do is to go home. But I want to make sure when I get home, I can do what I would like to do. Okay? Yes, sir.
This isn't quite as deep as Chris's question, but
yeah.
What's the strangest American custom that you've come across that just struck you as really being odd?
Oh dear. Yeah. That's an excellent question. Although I'll have to disappoint you. You see, because like I go and talk, anytime I go and talk to people, especially high schools, I notice they will ask me, did you have culture shock when you came to America? And I think I'm perhaps the only person in the whole world who doesn't have culture shock. Because culture shock is normal, you know. So you've asked a great question there, and I should be able to think of one thing in America that kind of I thought was weird. But believe it or not, I can't think of any. I cannot think of any. And I think it's because of the way I travel. I don't have expectations. I just go. And I've never been to anywhere in the place where I did not have fun. You know, my friends tell me, you like everything. What don't you like, you know? But that's basically true about my traveling. Everywhere I've been to in the world, I had a wonderful time. I go with an open mind. I don't have any expectations. Then nothing appears strange to me. Nothing appears strange to me. And they have been asked that question before. I thought very seriously, I still don't know who I am. You know. But the other thing about it too, is this. I have noticed that, I mean, it's very easy to find strange things about other people. It is so easy. It is so easy. If I go to France, I want to find strange things, no matter how sophisticated they think they are. I mean, you can just close your eyes. They are all over the place. It's the same thing. I come to America. It's not a perfect nation. There are problems all over the place. Okay? The same thing. You go to Africa, you go to Asia, and all. So it's very easy, very, very easy to find strange things in codes about people. But what is difficult is to be able to find good things, you know. And I try to find good things. I'm not doing you a favor, not that I love Americans so much, but that's the key to my own happiness, is to be able to look at the positives and expect anything. I have met people traveling. I met Americans in Singapore, and they were like, oh, what a terrible place, the way these Chinese live, you know? The same thing when I was in Swaziland. I've met people from Ghana who live in Swaziland, and the only thing they could say is just bad things about Swazis. Oh, they are so terrible, oh, they are disgusting, oh, you know what I mean? Yeah? And I think when you travel and you have expectations, then you get culture shock, okay? If you don't have any expectations, you're open-minded and ready for anything, you're going to get surprises, but a surprise is not the same as a shock. So you may come across cultural surprises, but not culture shocks. And this is the thing. That's a great question. And yes, ma'am.
This will probably take a dissertation to answer, but I just want to get a brief overview. Since the majority, probably the majority of world crises right now are based on cultural differences, going back hundreds of years in some cases, and I mean, there's some pretty good examples right now. Do you think that these will just wear themselves out? I mean, to the point where there'll be no one left who has it? Or do you think they'll really come across maybe a solution based on economics rather than a putting aside of the cultural differences?
Great. That's a very good question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to wet my throat. It's difficult to answer. You know why? Because it's quite interesting, I mean, what is happening to the world today and to mankind. On one hand, you think we are progressing so fast. On the other hand, you think we are actually moving backwards, okay? Culturally, I mean. Okay? And there are many factors that explain that. What are some of those factors? They're not easy to diagnose, okay? But one of the things you mentioned yourself is economic crisis. I think that economic crisis perpetuates cultural differences. How does it do that? Okay. Because let's look at it first within the same country context, all right? Let's look at a country that has been doing relatively well economically, growing, a lot of jobs for people, okay? Then all of a sudden the economy starts to do relatively badly. Okay? Then what do you see happening? Let's look at Europe, for example. Okay? Let's look at even Germany today. Germany has been a very relatively stable economy. It had one of the, or perhaps the most liberal immigration policy in Europe or in the world. Okay? Then what has happened to Germany? They had reunification. The reunification put a lot of pressure on resources in Germany. It led to a lot of resentment against people from the East. That resentment was translated into resentment against other ethnic groups, the Turks, for example, racial groups, the Jews, etc., etc. Germany has become a very difficult place to live today if you are not German in the true sense of the word. All right. If you look at the rest of Europe, let's look at England, where I go to, and I feel most comfortable in England more than any other European country. England is one of the most diverse countries in the world because of their colonial heritage. A lot of people from the colonies have found a home in England. All right. London is really diverse, perhaps the most diverse city in the world, except for Paris, I would think. All right? Today, England is having serious problems, ethnic as well as racial problems there. Why? Because the economy is doing so poorly. There's unemployment all over the place. You go to France, the same thing is happening over there. All right? Exactly the same thing is happening over there. So it seems to me that when there is economic progress and stability, and I think that America is probably a wonderful example of that. It's probably one reason why American society seems to be relatively stable. There are a lot of problems in this society. I'm not denying them. I'm just comparing it to some of these countries in Europe at the present moment. Okay, is that you have economic crisis. Economic crisis for the first time. You begin to look around now, and all of a sudden you say, ah, look, they are different. They are the cause of the problem. Okay, they are the cause of the problem. So where is that taking us to? I think that as far as economic crisis continues in the world, and we see Eastern Europe, the crisis is continuing. We see Africa, the crisis is continuing. Okay, within countries and internationally. Then what is going to happen is that we're going to find ethnic conflict as well as racial conflict increasing at the same time. On the international scale, you see poverty in developing countries. Okay, chasing a lot of us out of our countries to go abroad. So if you go to Paris today, a lot of the problems they have is with what? The North Africans. The North Africans in Paris. The Turks in Germany. International migration. So see, economic crisis, whether within nations can create a lot of ethnic tension, both within those nations as well as on an international scale. So where are we going towards? I'm not too sure. I'm not very sure. The picture doesn't look too positive to me. But I only hope that I may be wrong. I'm not quite sure myself. Yes. Ma'am?
Yes, I'd like to know your opinion as a man of the world. Do you really think of America? Are we intruding in other countries' affairs, or are we assisting them? How is it perceived?
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry to say that international politics is a very inconsistent, very hypocritical area. Why? Because most of international politics is based on self-interest. All right? That's the reality of the situation. And we have seen America intervening in many parts of the world out of self-interest. All right? Having said that, can we say that America only intervenes out of self-interest? All right? That's not an easy question to answer. But I would like to say that there are times when American intervention is needed and it is desired. Okay? There may have been time in the past, and there are several examples, actually, not me, where America intervened and the whole world felt like it shouldn't be there. The countries that it went into felt like they shouldn't be there. And they did it mostly out of self-interest. Right. But if you look at countries like Somalia, for example, if you look at Eastern Europe today, right, it is very difficult to say that, oh, America is intervening because of self-interest. Although, though I have to tell you, I read an article in the Denver Post and the New York Times, which says that America is in Somalia because what? They have discovered huge quantities of oil in Somalia. I read that in the New York Times and the Denver Post, which very much surprised me, because I personally strongly supported the American intervention in Somalia. I thought it was a purely humanitarian gesture until I read that. They said they have done that deliberately, and that's why the Exxon representative in Somalia is like the honorary U.S. ambassador in Somalia, and that the head of the Marines in Somalia is actually living in his private residence. So, so the basic thing is international politics. You don't know. It's like the Iran-Contra affair. Okay, you don't know about what exactly is going on under the table until perhaps it's too late. But having put aside the political problems, okay, as a matter of principle, I think that America lives in an international community which needs America, and that America has the power and resources to help significantly. America cannot do anything, mind you. You have enough problems of your own, okay, in this country to worry about. So you cannot be the international policeman for everybody and going to solve everybody's problems. It's just not possible. In the same way, you cannot just isolate yourself and say, we don't care, it's not our problem. Because we live in a world today where you cannot just run away. What's happening in one country affects another country. That's the way the world has become today. Poverty in some unknown country somewhere in Eastern Europe would affect you one way or the other. Because you see, some of us are coming. How many more are coming, someone will say. And it's true, poverty drives people to seek opportunities abroad. If you go to Paris today, you have a lot of people from North Africa. Some of them cannot even read or write their name. Okay? War. We have this bombing in New York, so people are suspecting that maybe it was a terrorist bomb. You ask yourself, what was Croatian, warfare in Eastern Europe have to do with the World Trade Center in New York? But that's just the way the world has become. And I don't think the answer is to say, oh, because they are bombing us, we wouldn't intervene. Whether you intervene or not, if you don't go, someone will come for you. You see, this is the way it is, unfortunately. Well, those are very good questions. Mike?
Yeah, I was just curious. It seems to be different forces going on nowadays. You've got countries in Europe coming together under the EC, and you've got more factionalism, like you mentioned, former Yugoslavia. Which do you see being the stronger force? More unitarianism or more factionalism?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Mike. So Mike is asking us, what do I see as the stronger force in Europe? The tendency towards disintegration or the tendency towards integration? All right. Depends on, I suppose, the cause of each tendency. All right? Okay, the cause of the disintegration that's going on in Eastern Europe is political, it's also ethnic. All right? It's also economic. So you have economic, you have political, and then you also have what? Ethnic. Ethnic, political, and economic. Decades of communist or so-called communist rule has caused a lot of havoc in those economies. All right? Not so much when they were existing, by the way, but when they ceased to exist. Okay? All right? I mean, it's a contradiction, though. If you look at Eastern Europe, you say, oh my God, what is happening? Maybe they better bring communism back, Okay. I mean, it's probably better. I mean, we thought with communism, we couldn't go to bed. We were scared of nuclear weapons. Okay? But what is going on now? We are scared they're going to finish each other. All right? If you're in France today, you're scared that you don't know what's going to happen. Next minute, it could be all these Yugoslavs flooding into France. How about crime? How about all these things that go with that, So you have a different kind of problem altogether. All right. But to address your question more specifically, because the problems in Eastern Europe have got these three major causes: political, economic, and ethnic, which are very, very strong processes. They're very, very strong processes. Okay? It seems to me that the tendency towards disintegration may be a stronger force than any other tendency. In particular, the tendency towards integration. Because what explains the tendency towards integration in Europe is mainly economy. The European Common Market, which I'm working with. Okay? The Europeans have realized that over the years, they have lost their international supremacy, their dominance over the rest of the world, as a result of competition from the United States of America and also from Japan. So they decided, let's put our differences apart and come together. So they came together and now they have formed this European Common Market. There are a lot of problems within the European Common Market. However, Europe seems to be moving ahead. So I believe that the tendency towards disintegration is stronger because of these three reasons, but also because it is more disruptive. Negative things naturally are stronger in life than positive things, That's the way life is. Things that are negative have a stronger impact than things that are positive. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Yes, ma'am. I thought you had the question. No, the lady in front of you. Okay, I thought you said. I always tell people I meet, Christmas comes once a year. It's not every day you're going to meet somebody from Gambia.
Concludes our program. Thank you for coming.